This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
In 2010, I was working in dispatch. And during that time, I was going to school. I was doing my graphic design college courses to get my bachelor's. And one of the things that we needed to do for one of the classes was it was in digital storytelling. What they wanted us to do was to share a story and tell a story, really. And there was two different ways we could do this. We could either do it in animation with music and narration, or we could do still pictures, also with the music and some sort of narration to tell that story. Well, during that time, I was playing around with the idea of sharing dispatch stories. I found out that the general public, a lot of people really don't know what it is that 911 dispatchers do on a daily basis. So I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to share some stories. And this is the earliest form of what is now within the trenches, and even sharing stories through the IM911 movement and Imagine Listening. I got two of my coworkers to help me out with it. And what I wanted them to do was tell me how they got into dispatch, their worst call, their best call, and why they do what they do. And that's how it all started. Now, years later, 2016, August 24, 2016, the IM911 movement is born. It's a day that pretty much dispatchers from around the world started sharing their stories, a raw look, a glimpse into what it is they do. And it spread. It was everywhere. It went global. We're in 2019 now, and stories are still shared daily. Powerful stories. And it spawned off a session called Imagine Listening, which is a form of peer support where dispatchers can share their IM911 stories. Well, we're coming up on IM911 Day, the anniversary of the birth of the IM911 movement. So IM911 Day 2019, what I want to do is share stories the way I did in the beginning, going back to basics. And that's what I'm looking for a lot of you to help me out with, to share your stories. And it can just be in short form. All I want to know is how you got into dispatch, your worst call, your best call, and why it is that you do what you do. For myself, how I got into dispatch, I really just fell into it. Like a lot of people, I was 19, moved to Florida, it was 2001, and I couldn't find a job anywhere. But a cousin of mine, her husband knew the chief of police. They said they were hiring dispatchers. So I went in. I had no idea what it was all about, but I went in. I thought I'd try it out. And I ended up getting the job. I know, not real fancy, but that's how I got into it. I just fell into it, and I fell in love with it. Yeah, it was stressful as hell, but I really fell in love with it. And with the people that I worked with, those out on the road, and especially those for the Thin Gold Line, my family there with me, my second family, working in dispatch, long hours, and just dealing with all kinds of crap. But good things as well, rare good things. Now, my worst call. My worst call, there's a lot of them. There are many calls. But one that always sticks with me, and I know I've talked about it a lot, it was about two brothers. And one of them had just gone through a bad breakup. And just kept saying that he couldn't live anymore, that he wanted to commit suicide. And he's with his brother and his brother's girlfriend. They're at a bar. They've been drinking. And they go back home. The one brother who's heartbroken is standing outside of the house and is still saying the same thing. I want to kill myself. His brother, kind of being fed up with what he's hearing, goes inside, grabs a gun that's loaded. takes it out to him and hands it to him and says, if you're going to do it, just go ahead and do it. Now, he said it to him thinking that he would realize that it was a dumb idea and that he wouldn't do it. But instead, he took that gun and he shot himself in the head right in front of his brother. Now, I know all this from the call that I took, but when the call first came in, all I heard was screaming. And sometimes I can still hear that screaming. I thought it was two females on the line. The person I was talking to was the one brother's girlfriend that had been out at the bar with them. And she just kept screaming and screaming and screaming. And I put in the address for an unknown situation. And we got people going out there as fast as we could. I brought my voice down to almost a whisper to kind of trick her. It was a technique that I learned in my training, that if someone is just screaming and screaming and you're trying to get their attention, your voice is just kind of background. But if you go bring it down to a whisper, it kind of makes the person think, was there anybody there? And then they stop. And then you jump in, you start asking questions. Now, I asked who the second female was that was there. And she said, there's no other girl that's here. That's actually my boyfriend. It was the brother, screaming and crying in agony for what he had just saw, what he had just done by giving his brother that gun, thinking that he was not going to do it, and he did. The brother ended up getting the gun as well, and he eventually put it down. He just kept yelling, I'm going to kill myself now. I can't believe he did it. I can't believe he did it. When he ran outside, I got the girl to safety, and I was telling her that police was on the way. They were almost there, and that EMS was headed that way as well. And she was repeating this to her boyfriend. The paramedics are almost here. And I'll never forget him yelling, what are the paramedics going to do? My brother's face is all over the snow. And everyone got out there, and I hung up. My part was done. And I remember my supervisor at the time turning and looking at me and asking if I was okay. And I told her, yes, I was okay. But I really wasn't. That call really messed me up. The only thing that helped was that when I got off work at 5 in the morning, was I called my brother. I needed to hear his voice. And I remember dialing and waiting, just ringing and ringing and ringing and thinking, come on, man, please pick up the phone. And he did, finally. He picked up the phone. And as soon as he said hello, I said, I love you, man. And I remember him saying, shut up. I said, what's wrong? And I said, I love you. And he asked again, what's wrong? And I told him. And at the end, he understood. I just needed to hear his voice. And he said, I love you too. That's probably out of all the calls, the one that sticks with me the most. And it always will. It'll always be there. But in sharing these stories, it's how we manage it and can continue on and get past it. Now, my best call, probably my best call out of all the calls that I had that had those rare good outcomes. It was a mom who called in. Her kids had been sledding. They had a pond that had iced over. But the kids were sliding down the hill to see who could get the furthest. And the youngest was the one who won the competition. However, the little girl ended up going all the way out into the middle of the pond, and it was thin ice. Now, she hadn't gone through, but they couldn't get to her. So she called, and she is, as you can imagine, hysterical on the phone with me. I kept her calm, and I got everybody headed out there, and they saved her. They saved the little girl. And I remember about a week or so later, my one of my coworkers ends up yelling over and saying, "Do you guys know who took this call?" And I said, "What call is it?" And she goes, "Well, I'm reading something in the newspaper." And she starts describing the call that I just talked about. And I said, "That was my call." I said, "Why is it in the newspaper?" And she said that the parents had put out an ad and thanked all of law enforcement, fire, EMS, and the dispatcher who helped save their little girl. We don't always have good moments or closure like that, but I'll never forget that. And my coworker cut out that news clipping, and I have it at home, and I always will. Again, one of those good, rare calls that you end up getting that that stick with you as well, but in a good way. Now, why I do what I do, or what I did, I wanted to help people. I wanted to help them. It was a calling to be able to do all of that and get people the help that they needed. I loved it. When I left, it was the hardest decision I had to make, but I knew that I would be able to do even more. For not only the public to be able to learn from all of these stories, but for dispatchers as well, to be able to share these stories, get them out, learn from each other, and get the recognition that they deserve. Because it's a hard job. Not many people can do it. So that's why I do what I do. And I love it. I wouldn't change it. My name is Ricardo Martinez, and I am 911.